The Philistines gathered their armies together for war. They came in great numbers, confident in their strength. Their march toward Judah showed they were ready to fight and conquer. Row after row of soldiers moved forward with discipline. Their armor shone in the sunlight as they advanced. The sound of marching feet filled the land. The Philistines set up their camp between Soko and Azekah. Tents spread across the land like a growing city. Fires burned as warriors prepared for battle. Swords were sharpened and shields were inspected carefully. Every soldier prepared his weapons with focus. They expected battle soon. King Saul gathered the army of Israel to meet the enemy. The Israelites came from their towns and villages. They marched toward the same land where the Philistines waited. The men of Israel took their positions for battle. Many of them were not trained warriors. Fear quietly entered their hearts. Israel stood on one hill, watching carefully. The Philistines stood on the opposite hill, strong and confident. Neither side moved forward. A wide valley lay between the two armies. Then a single man stepped forward from the Philistine camp. His movement was slow and confident. All eyes turned toward him. His name was Goliath, from the city of Gath. He was chosen as the Philistine champion. His size made him stand out from every other man. Goliath was much taller than any man in Israel. He stood like a tower of strength. Fear followed wherever he walked. Goliath wore a helmet made of bronze. It covered his head completely. It shone brightly under the sun. Goliath wore a helmet made of bronze. It covered his head completely. It shone brightly under the sun. When the men of Israel saw him, they were afraid. Some stepped backward without thinking. Their confidence faded quickly. Each step he took was heavy and loud. The ground seemed to tremble beneath him. His movement showed complete confidence. He carried a huge spear in his hand. The iron tip was very heavy. It was made for destruction. A shield bearer walked in front of him. The shield was large and strong. It was made to guard a giant. Goliath stood in the middle of the valley. He placed himself where everyone could see him. He wanted to be noticed.
Why have you come out to prepare for battle? Your god can't save you, little rats. I'll eat your heads. Nobody can save you, you cowards.
His voice echoed across the hills. The sound reached both armies clearly. Every soldier heard his words. Silence followed his voice. The men of Israel listened with fear. Their courage weakened with every word. No one answered him.
Choose a man and send him to fight me.
The valley remained empty. No champion stepped forward. The moment passed in silence. If Israel's champion won, the Philistines would serve them. If Goliath won, Israel would serve the Philistines. The choice was heavy. Goliath shouted his challenge once more. He openly defied Israel. His pride was clear. King Saul heard the words of the giant. Fear filled his heart. He did not answer. Saul was greatly afraid. The king who once led battles stood silent. He remained in the camp. All Israel heard Goliath's challenge. They were deeply afraid. No one moved forward. The valley stayed quiet. No sword was raised. Fear ruled the moment. David was the youngest son of Jesse. He lived in Bethlehem, a small town in Judah. While others went to war, David stayed with the sheep. David cared for his father's flock every day. He led them to good grass and safe places. He watched over them carefully. David learned patience while tending the sheep. He stayed alert to protect them from danger. This quiet work shaped his character. When the sheep rested, David played music. His songs were prayers to the Lord. He trusted God even in quiet moments. Jesse, David's father, thought about his sons at war. He worried about their safety. He wanted news from the battlefield. Jesse prepared bread and food for his sons. He also gathered grain and cheese. He chose David to take the supplies. David listened carefully to his father. He did not question the task. He was ready to obey. David rose early the next morning. He prepared himself for the journey. He was responsible and careful. David carried the food on his journey. He walked toward the camp of Israel. His steps were steady and faithful. David came near the camp as the army prepared for battle. Soldiers were organizing and shouting. The sound of war filled the air. Israel's army lined up to face the Philistines. They stood ready but uneasy. Fear still lingered among them. David left the food to the supply keeper. He followed his father's instructions exactly. Then he hurried towards his brothers. The giant stepped forward once more. He spoke the same challenge as before. His voice was strong and proud. David listened closely to the giant's words. He paid attention to every sentence. His heart reacted differently than the others. When Israel's soldiers saw Goliath, they fled. Fear took control of them. They were greatly afraid. David was surprised by their fear. He did not understand why no one answered. He saw the situation clearly. The men talked about the giant. They spoke about the reward promised by the king. Yet no one stepped forward. David heard about the great reward. He listened carefully to every word. His interest grew. David looked toward the valley. He saw the giant defying Israel. He knew this was wrong. David's oldest brother heard him speaking. Eliab became angry. Pride filled his words. Eliab accused David of pride. he spoke harshly to him. David remained calm. Someone told King Saul about David's words. David was sent for. A new moment was about to begin. David was brought before King Saul. The king looked tired and troubled. The weight of fear rested on him. David stood humbly before the king. He was young and carried no armor, yet he showed no fear. Saul had heard the giant's challenge many times. Each day had weakened his courage. He did not know what to do. Saul listened carefully to David. He was surprised by the young shepherd's courage. Still, doubt remained in his heart. He reminded David of the danger. Saul explained that Goliath was a trained warrior. The giant had fought since his youth. David was still very young. David did not argue with the king. He waited for the right moment to speak. Then he shared his testimony. David told Saul about his work as a shepherd. He spoke of caring for his father's sheep. Danger often came to the flock. David explained how a lion once took a lamb. He chased after it without fear. He trusted the Lord for strength. David struck the lion and rescued the lamb. The animal fell by God's help. David gave God the credit. Another time, a bear came against the sheep. David did not run away. He faced the danger bravely. David struck the bear and saved the lamb. The Lord delivered him again. God proved faithful every time. David spoke of what the Lord had done. Saul saw something different in him. He saw trust in God, not fear. Hope began to rise. At last, Saul agreed to let David go. The decision was difficult, but faith spoke louder than fear. Saul dressed David in his own armor. He placed a helmet on David's head. The armor was heavy. David tried to move in the armor. He could not walk properly. David removed the armor completely. He stood free again. His confidence returned. David went down to a nearby brook. The water flowed calmly. He knelt beside it. Then he chose 5 smooth stones from the stream. They fit perfectly in his hand. He placed them in his pouch. The Philistine champion began to move toward David. His steps were slow and confident. He believed the fight was already won. Goliath looked closely at David. He saw only a young shepherd boy. He did not see a threat. David was much smaller than the giant. He carried no sword or armor. Yet he did not turn back.
Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?
His laughter echoed across the valley. Goliath cursed David by his false gods. His words were full of anger and pride. He wanted to frighten him. David listened without fear. His heart was steady and peaceful. He trusted the Lord completely.
You come to me with sword and spear, but I come in the name of the Lord.
His voice was clear and strong. He spoke of the God of Israel. David said the Lord would give victory that day. He declared that all would know God's power. His words carried faith. David explained that the battle belonged to the Lord. He said God does not save by sword or spear. He trusted God's strength. David ran quickly toward the battle. He did not hesitate or slow down. Faith pushed him forward. David reached into his shepherd's bag. His hand closed around one stone. He chose carefully. The stone flew toward the giant. It traveled straight and fast. Nothing stopped it. The stone struck Goliath in the forehead. It sank deeply into him. His strength failed instantly. The giant stumbled and lost balance. David took the giant's sword. It was large and heavy. He lifted it with both hands and struck Goliath with his own sword. The giant was dead. The Philistines saw their champion fall. Fear filled their hearts. They knew they were defeated. Israel's army saw what had happened. Joy and courage returned. They prepared to move forward. The Lord had delivered Israel that day. A shepherd's faith changed history. God's power was made known. The men of Israel saw the enemy running. They understood that victory was near. Courage filled their hearts again. The soldiers of Israel shouted loudly. They rushed forward together. Fear was replaced with boldness. Israel chased the Philistines through the valley. They followed them along the roads. The enemy continued to flee. The victory spread across the land. David remained calm after the battle. He did not celebrate loudly. He knew the victory came from the Lord. David kept the sword of the giant. It reminded everyone of what had happened. God had delivered Israel. King Saul watched David closely. Questions filled his mind. He wanted to know more about the young shepherd. Saul studied David closely. He saw a young man, not a warrior. Yet something was different about him. Jonathan, Saul's son, watched David closely also. He saw courage and faith. Respect began to grow. David did not boast about the victory. He stood quietly among the men. His heart remained humble. Israel returned home after the battle. The news spread quickly. Joy filled the land. Women came out from the towns. They brought music and celebration. Their hearts were joyful. Saul heard the song clearly. The words troubled him. Jealousy entered his heart. Saul became angry and uneasy. He felt threatened by David. Fear returned in a new way. David did not notice Saul's thoughts. He continued to serve faithfully. He trusted the Lord. Their song echoed through the streets. The words were spoken with joy. The women sang as they danced. Their song praised the victory of Israel. Their voices were loud and joyful. Saul thought about the praise given to David. He felt the people loved David more than him. Fear grew inside him. The next day, David played music for Saul. He did this to calm the king. David served faithfully. Saul suddenly threw the spear at David. He meant to strike him. The moment was dangerous. Saul made David a commander over soldiers. David led them wisely. The people respected him. David behaved wisely in all he did. The Lord was with him. Everything he did succeeded. Saul watched David's success. His fear grew stronger. Jealousy remained in his heart. All Israel loved David. They trusted him as a leader. They followed him gladly. David remained humble despite his success. He did not seek glory for himself. He trusted the Lord. God continued to be with David. The people could see it clearly. The Lord was preparing him for the future. Saul stood alone with his thoughts. Fear ruled his heart. The king was troubled. Jonathan, the king's son, noticed David. Their meeting would change both of their lives. Jonathan listened carefully to David's words. He saw honesty and courage in him. His heart was drawn toward David. David did not speak with pride. He gave glory to the Lord for the victory. His humble spirit stood out clearly. Jonathan felt a deep connection with David. The Bible says his soul was knit with David's soul. God was forming a true friendship. Jonathan loved David as he loved himself. This love was not selfish or jealous. It was pure and loyal. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing. It was a sign of honor and trust. He chose to give it to David. As Israel returned home, joy spread through the land. People celebrated the victory God had given them. Songs of joy filled the streets. Women came out from every town to meet the army. They sang and danced with happiness. Their hearts were full of joy. Saul thought about the praise given to David. He felt the people loved David more than him. Fear began to grow inside him. Saul said in his heart that David was gaining everything. Only the kingdom seemed left to give him. Suspicion took root. Saul heard the words carefully. The song upset him deeply. His joy quickly faded. Saul became very angry. Jealousy filled his heart. He felt insulted and threatened. The next day, David played music for Saul. He did this to calm the king. David continued to serve faithfully. Saul held a spear in his hand. His thoughts were dark and troubled. An evil thought came into his heart. Saul threw the spear toward David. He wanted to pin him to the wall. Danger filled the room. Saul realized David had escaped. Fear replaced his anger. He knew the Lord was with David.